Maker's Mark just dropped their brand new wood finishing series release. Let's see how good it is. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Hutch. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey through the world of whiskey. So that's right, we're diving into a brand new bottle, one that just started hitting shelves, the Keeper's release from Maker's Mark. So if you've been following along with the wood finishing series, we thought for a minute it might end at the end of 2023 with the BEP release. Maker's also got new master distillers, lots of changeover there, so we weren't sure. But they brought it back in 2024 with a new focus, which is going to be on the people who make Maker's Mark. So the first release was the Heart release, which really celebrated the entire whiskey making team. This release, the Keeper's release, what's the story here? So right here on the side of the bottle, it does say that the Keeper's release is a one-of-a-kind expression inspired by the people who oversee the maturation of our whiskey, the true keepers of Maker's Mark. Through cold winters and hot Kentucky summers, they deploy a deep knowledge of the aging process, hand-rotating casks to ensure every single drop of our whiskey emerges from the barrel at its very best. This is a bold expression with hints of We'll leave that for now. We'll leave the tasting notes to when we actually dive in here. So some important stats and other things it lets us know on the bottle. It says the Keeper's release right on the front. It's 109.2 proof. It's the second of 5 releases they plan to do for this new chapter. It does say the stave profile on here is 10 virgin toasted American oak staves. So toasted oak, okay. And then bottled in February of 2025. Okay, I can read these tasting notes pretty generic, so we'll just read them off. It says bold oak toasted sweetness. Not a ton of detail there, basically letting us know that this is a toasted bourbon in a lot of ways. So I'm really interested to see how this stacks up. I have a lot of fond memories and favorites from the original wood finishing series. I thought the Heart release was solid when I first tasted it. It's grown on me over time, and I do think it's quite good. And we'll do a little comparison to that once we dive into this one. But let's spend some time here with the Keeper's release. So, on the nose, how good is it? And of course, I forgot to mention the price here, $75 MSRP. So, we're really asking ourselves the question, is it worth that? Okay, so it is very toasty. Big like marshmallow, burnt sugar, creme brulee feeling. A little bit of like a dried cinnamon. Or just dry cinnamon. Oak for sure. And then like a darker fruit profile. Almost like a golden raisin vibe to it. Yeah. But I would say the biggest thing here is that toasty oak. And a little bit of that cinnamon. But I do think the toasted nature of it is prominent for sure. A little bit of an ethanol kick. I've only had this open for one day, so may need a little extra time. But yeah, sweet, lots of sugars. Not a ton of cherry for me. Again, the fruit really goes more in that like raisin category for me. All right, let's try it on the palate. Cheers. Okay. I would call that super consistent with what I got on the nose. So tons of that toasted marshmallow, toasted sugar right at the core of it. A vanilla cinnamon thing going on. Oak for sure. Sort of a nice bold oak in the middle of the sip, as they say on the front there. I do kind of agree with that. And then that golden raisin dried fruit thing comes in on the back end to add like a little bit of a layer of depth. Otherwise, it would only exist in that one strain of like clearly toasted bourbon. But I do think that darker fruit is helping, and a little bit of spice. All right, now that we've got it on the palate, let's go in for a second sip, see if we can pick out some more flavors. Cheers. Okay. So there's an oak that isn't just toasted oak. There's like a nice, rich, mature note to this, maybe tending a little bit toward tobacco even in the middle of the sip for me. And I think that maybe it's part of the story of oaking it for me, but it does feel like what they're trying to show off is barrel influence and maturation process. It's not a super fruity, spicy, or interesting maker's mark in that sense. I feel like I've had the private selects. If you think about the cellar aged, if you think some of the other wood finishing series from previous years, they went in a little bit more tangential directions. This feels like it's like, what does our whiskey taste like when it's nice and mature and well-rounded? And then you get that toasted layer to even add more feeling of oak and body to it. So I wouldn't say it is super, super complex. In fact, I think it's pretty simple, but I'm enjoying what it's bringing to the table, which is always a good thing. If it's gonna be simple, bring good flavors, and that's definitely what this is doing. I did hear or read from the press release that this is a mix of 2 batches of bourbon, and they would have put the staves or finished it for somewhere between 5 to 9 weeks. So it definitely has had enough time to get some of that toasted presence. But again, it's not hiding just a nice, richer oak, not just light toasted oak, but a darker oak as well. All right, let's go in for a third sip. We'll really evaluate the finish and then think about the whiskey overall. Cheers. Yeah. So for the first time in that sip, I did feel like you could argue there's a little bit of like a dark cherry. But it's the oak. That's the star of the show. That is the point of the whiskey, and they're kind of just staying in that lane. The creme brulee toasted sugar is really, really nice on this. A lot of the times I've had toasted bourbons and they almost go too far in that direction. Even something as high quality as like a Michter's toasted, sometimes I'm like, wow, almost all the depth of the bourbon is masked by the toasting process and how much just the sugar marshmallow feeling comes through. For me, this has that, especially in the front end of the palate, but then the middle of the palate is saved by that darker oak. And then again, I'm getting that like golden raisin, dried fruit feeling on the back end. I don't think the finish is super, super long here. I think it's actually more like solidly medium. It's 109 proof, but I don't feel like it's spicy. I feel like the toastiness sits with you for a while. The oak is nice that kind of lingers for a bit, but mostly it just invites me back in for another sip to get a little bit more of that sugar punch, brulee power. Okay, so maybe a little bit of cherry now coming through for me. So what I want to do now is just pull out the heart release real quick, pour a little sip of that and compare to this and see which one I lean toward. All right, so we got the heart release poured up here. As a reminder, this was the first release in this new chapter. It is 112 proof, had 10 virgin toasted French oak staves as part of the finishing process here. Their notes here are caramel, chocolate, and maple. From my recollection, that maple did really come through. So let's dive in real quick on the nose and palate and see how it compares to this Keeper's release. Yeah, so it's much more of like a dark chocolate and maple experience. Even a little bit of like a apple fruitiness, something a little bit more bright and tart mixed in there. All right, it's going on the palate. Cheers. See, it is good. It's got nice body. It's got that French oak spice. It's got chocolate. It's got that maple, pure maple kind of experience with just sweetness. But again, it feels rich. It's kind of lingering on my palate and making my mouth water a little bit, which is a really nice quality to it. Though I don't think it brings the oakiness. It's more in that spice and maple direction, versus this has more of an oak profile that I really enjoy, and it is pretty sugary as well. Let me get just a little bit of water. We'll go back to the Keeper's Release one more time. Okay, so we'll dive in. Oh yeah, wow. It's so stark now. This smells like pure butterscotch at this point. Had a little more time to open up, but it is a lot lighter and toastier. All right, cheers. And that is the power comparison. Wow. Coming off of this, the Heart Release, which is darker in comparison, with a little bit more of that chocolate maple power and spice, French oak spice. This tastes like butter, butterscotch, caramel candies, toasted oak. All that brulee sugar just feels lighter and brighter and more liquefied in a sense. I know it is liquid, but you know what I mean, where it's like liquefied butter or butterscotch sauce. Like, that really came through. And the oak is still present there to give it some backbone, but it's definitely a lighter, toastier profile than the Heart Release. Which one do I prefer? Honestly, right now, I'm loving this Keeper's Release and just how potent that sort of butterscotch brulee sugar experience is. I do think the Heart Release has maybe a little bit more staying power. So it's kind of a trade-off there, and it's more of what you're in the mood for, something a little spicier, maple power to it versus light, bright, toasted sugars and oak. Okay, so I think the wood finishing series continues to be very solid. I don't think that I've really ever had one of these releases where I was like, oh, that's worth $150, and they're giving it away for 75 bucks. It's not necessarily that kind of series, but it is consistently quite good for that $75 price point. So if you see it for around MSRP, I think it's worth it, especially if you're a big fan of makers and want to continue to follow the series. Let me know in the comments below if you've seen this one drop near you, or if you've had the chance to taste it, and if so, what did you think? While you're at it, hit the like button on this video. That's what gets it out to the most people. And then, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the Bourbon Hutch. Trying to reach 5,000 subscribers, pretty ambitious here in 2025, but I think we can do it, and we will celebrate with a pretty big giveaway if we hit that milestone. So join us if you haven't already. Till I see you guys again for another video, all I can say is keep drinking good whiskey and cheers.